Welcome back to another mind-blowing top list. We all saw BTS debut as skinny teenagers back in 2013, but their physical evolution into global powerhouses is absolutely insane. Have you ever wondered what the fashion insiders really think about this massive glow-up? Who built the most impressive physique behind closed doors? And who shocked the wardrobe team the most? Was it the leader's gym obsession or the maknae's raw genetics? Brace yourselves, because a personal stylist is finally spilling the tea and ranking all 7 members based on their physical transformations. Who truly takes the #1 spot? Number 7. Yoongi, the sleek refinement, hidden strength behind the runway shadows. When you look back at the early days of 2013, Yoongi was the epitome of the underground hip-hop aesthetic, a deceptively fragile-looking teenager swallowed whole by oversized graphic tees, baggy basketball shorts, and heavy chains that seemed to weigh down his slender frame. In those formative years, the styling team deliberately used layers upon layers of heavy fabric, long jackets, and bulky accessories, not just to match the aggressive, rebellious hip-hop concept, but to visually construct a stage presence for a boy who was naturally incredibly lean and deceptively pale. What the public didn't see, and what the wardrobe team knew all too well behind the dressing room curtains, was the silent, agonizing physical battle Yoongi was fighting against his own body due to a severe shoulder injury sustained during a pre-debut delivery accident. For years, this hidden physical limitation severely restricted his upper body mobility and prevented him from engaging in the intense weight training regimens that his fellow members were adopting, forcing the stylist to constantly engineer clever clothing tricks to mask his asymmetrical posture and protect his vulnerable joints during explosive choreography. The real, breathtaking metamorphosis began in late 2020, a monumental turning point when Yoongi made the brave decision to undergo corrective surgery for his torn labrum, completely stepping away from the spotlight to focus entirely on intensive, grueling physical rehabilitation and target-specific strength training. When he finally returned to the stage, the shift was immediately palpable to the wardrobe staff, who had to completely redesign his custom tailoring measurements from scratch because his back had noticeably broadened, his chest had filled out, and that slight, protective slouch had transformed into an upright, commanding posture of absolute confidence. This physical evolution culminated spectacularly during his solo D-Day World Tour and his appointment as a global brand ambassador for the luxury fashion house Valentino, where he completely shocked the world by effortlessly pulling off incredibly sharp, minimalist, slim-cut couture suits that require an immaculate, balanced body frame to look truly high fashion. Stylists were no longer hiding him beneath oversized streetwear. Instead, they were using clean, structured silhouettes and plunging necklines that highlighted a newly developed lean muscularity, a razor-sharp jawline, and a mature, sophisticated rock star aura that radiated sheer power. The sheer emotional weight of seeing a man go from secretly taping his injured shoulder backstage to confidently filling out custom-tailored Italian blazers with effortless grace is exactly why his transformation is so profoundly reflective. It is a masterclass in subtle, intentional refinement, proving that a physical glow-up isn't always about building the most massive, explosive muscles, but about healing your body from the inside out to unlock a timeless, aristocratic elegance that completely redefines how modern luxury clothing drapes over your skin. This subtle yet powerful evolution leaves everyone wondering, if the member who focused purely on sleek refinement managed to shock the styling team this much, what happens when we look at the dancers who use their bodies as literal instruments of art on stage? Number 6. J-Hope's Dancer's Precision, forged in the fires of gravity and rhythm. When we first laid eyes on Jungkook in the chaotic, intensely stylized debut era of 2013, the wardrobe department was handed a remarkably specific and incredibly challenging mission to make a perpetually smiling, naturally slender underground street dancer look like an intimidating, aggressive hip-hop warrior, which meant burying his astonishingly light, almost fragile frame beneath suffocating layers of thick leather, heavy spiked accessories, oversized sports jerseys, and that iconic, restrictive black face mask that deliberately hid his razor-sharp jawline from the world. As the undisputed dance captain and the rhythmic core of the group, Hoseok possessed the terrifyingly high metabolism of an elite, world-class athlete, burning through thousands upon thousands of calories every single day just to perfect the grueling, acrobatic, and frankly dangerous choreography of their early tracks, a relentless physical output that kept his body fat at a remarkably low, almost non-existent percentage, but severely prevented him from building any substantial visible muscle mass. For those first few years, the stylist treated his body not as a static canvas for traditional high fashion, but a dynamic, wildly moving mechanism, deliberately dressing him in fluid, excessively oversized garments that would beautifully catch the air and violently exaggerate his incredible popping and locking techniques on stage, essentially hiding the true anatomical reality of his physique behind the mesmerizing, high-speed optical illusion of his flawless movements. However, the first monumental crack in this carefully constructed wardrobe illusion, the moment that sent shockwaves through the fandom and the fashion insiders alike, happened during the legendary Wings era, specifically during the breathtaking, gravity-defying Boy Meets Evil solo intro, where the styling team made the radical, historic decision to strip away all those bulky, protective layers and put him in a deceptively simple, plunging velvet top that completely exposed the core made of pure, unadulterated steel. That exact moment was a profound revelation, shocking the wardrobe staff with the sheer, terrifying definition of his oblique muscles and the unbelievable tensile strength required to suspend his entire body mid-air with such surgical grace, proving once and for all that Hoseok didn't need to be bulked up to look dangerously powerful. His power lay in an absolute aerodynamic precision and a lean musculature that looked as if it had been painstakingly carved from solid, flawless marble. This realization sparked an entirely new, deeply sensual wardrobe direction for him, moving into the iconic Fake Love and Blood, Sweat, and Tears eras, where stylists aggressively pivoted towards sheer, translucent fabrics, restrictive leather body harnesses, cropped embellished jackets, and tight-fitting, dangerously unbuttoned silk shirts that perfectly accentuated his exceptionally long, elegant limbs, the impossibly sharp, angular lines of his collarbones, and the beautiful, fluid grace of his neck. Yet, the true, mind-bending physical metamorphosis, the ultimate evolution that left the wardrobe department completely speechless and scrambling to dramatically alter his custom measurements, occurred precisely during BTS's highly anticipated Chapter 2 and his subsequent incredibly demanding military enlistment as a deeply respected, elite assistant drill instructor in the Special Forces Division. When J-Hope temporarily traded his glittering designer wardrobe for a heavily structured, strictly regulated military uniform, his body underwent a profound, fundamental, and highly masculine shift. The grueling daily tactical marches, the heavy, relentless lifting, and the intense, weather-beaten physical conditioning of army life forced his naturally lean dancer's frame to urgently adapt by packing on dense, highly functional, military-grade muscle tissue, significantly and permanently broadening his previously slender shoulders, visibly thickening his chest, and transforming his previously elegant neck into a solid, imposing pillar of absolute, undeniable strength. This wasn't the puffy, artificial bulk of a bodybuilder, but the hardened, lethal solidity of a true soldier, which became blazingly apparent during his historic, solo headline performance at Lollapalooza, affectionately dubbed Hopapalooza, where he commanded a massive stage alone for 90 grueling minutes, radiating a raw, unpolished, gritty rock star energy that demanded a completely different style of clothing, heavily favoring distressed, grunge textures over oversized boxy fits that hinted at the massive strength underneath, and a towering, undeniable physical presence that completely eclipsed the stadium lights. Upon his highly anticipated return from the military, the global high fashion world, particularly the visionary designers at Louis Vuitton, who had proudly named him their global house ambassador, were presented with a radically upgraded, breathtakingly mature physique that possessed the incredibly rare, almost impossible combination of a seasoned street dancer's liquid, feline flexibility and a veteran soldier's rugged, commanding solidity. This devastating new physical baseline allows him to effortlessly pull off incredibly daring, avant-garde silhouettes, dangerously deep necklines, and sharply tailored structural outerwear with a terrifyingly effortless, dominant masculine grace that simply did not exist in his teenage years, proving to the entire world that his body is quite literally a living, breathing masterpiece, shaped by millions of hours of sweat, relentless discipline, and the absolute mastery of gravity itself. Seeing the boy who used to hide his slight frame beneath oversized basketball jerseys, now confidently walking global fashion week red carpets in form-fitting, chest-bearing, bespoke luxury couture, is a deeply emotional, profoundly inspiring testament to his journey. But it leaves us with a burning, unavoidable question. If a dancer's meticulous precision can completely shatter and redefine the boundaries of global high fashion and shock the wardrobe team to their very core, what on earth happens to the measuring tapes and the stylist's sanity when we examine a member whose natural physical proportions were already considered a literal worldwide standard of beauty from the moment he was introduced to the camera? Number 5. Kim Seokjin. The worldwide proportions. The 60-centimeter shoulders that broke the wardrobe department. When the doors to the big hit fitting rooms first opened in the chaotic, hyper-anxious year of 2013, the wardrobe department was immediately confronted with a massive, almost impossible anatomical puzzle wrapped in the delicate, classically handsome face of an aspiring actor, Kim Seokjin. At the time, the reigning trend for K-pop idol fashion was aggressive, suffocatingly oversized hip-hop streetwear, a style that relied heavily on draping multiple layers of thick fabrics, heavily spiked leather jackets, and baggy graphic tees over slender teenage frames to create a false sense of bulk and intimidation. However, Seokjin was not built like a standard, slender teenager. He was born with a staggering, genetically blessed skeletal structure, featuring shoulders that measured a jaw-dropping 60 centimeters across, a frankly ridiculous Olympic swimmer-level width that instantly turned standard, off-the-rack clothing into an absolute nightmare for the styling team. If the stylist selected a shirt that perfectly fit his astonishingly wide shoulders, the fabric would inevitably billow out around his surprisingly trim, narrow waist, entirely hiding the magnificent, God-given V-taper proportions that would later make him a global fashion icon, effectively making him look like he was wearing a shapeless, boxy refrigerator box. Conversely, if they tried to tailor the waist to fit his lean core, the seams around his upper back and deltoids would literally threaten to rip apart the moment he executed the group's explosive, high-energy choreography. For those painful early years, this legendary frame was tragically hidden, buried beneath confusing, mismatched hip-hop gear and oversized varsity jackets that completely swallowed his majestic stature, while he silently carried the immense, crushing emotional burden of being the eldest brother, cooking for the younger members in their cramped dorm, and desperately trying to adapt his slow, dramatic actor's rhythm to the blistering, frantic pace of a hip-hop dance crew. But as BTS transitioned out of their aggressive, rebellious phase and stepped into the breathtakingly artistic, emotionally complex, the most beautiful moment in life, HYHH, and Wings eras, a massive stylistic awakening occurred behind the scenes. The wardrobe department finally realized that trying to dress Seokjin like a gritty underground rapper was a colossal mistake. They needed to dress him like the classic, aristocratic Hollywood leading man he was fundamentally born to be. The oversized chains and bandanas were violently thrown out, replaced by deeply plunging silk blouses, dangerously unbuttoned velvet dress shirts, and meticulously custom-tailored sweeping trench coats that specifically demanded a massive, commanding shoulder structure just to hang correctly on the human body. This was the exact moment the worldwide handsome phenomenon transcended being a mere self-proclaimed joke and solidified into an undeniable, structurally perfect reality, as the stylist began leaning heavily into clean, hyper-structured luxury silhouettes that highlighted his endlessly long neck, his elegantly broad chest, and his towering romantic aura. However, while the other members spent hours sweating in the HYBE gym to artificially build their width, Seokjin's ultimate, mind-blowing physical metamorphosis, the one that forced the stylist to completely throw away his old measurements and start all from scratch, did not happen in a fitness center. It happened in the freezing, brutal, unforgiving conditions of the South Korean military frontline. As the very first member to bravely step away from the blinding stadium lights and enlist as an active-duty soldier, the entire world held its breath as he was stripped of all makeup, hairstyling, and luxury designer armor, reduced to nothing but his raw, unedited, bare-bones physical form. Yet, instead of withering away, Seokjin thrived magnificently in the harsh environment, earning the highly prestigious, deeply respected, and physically excruciating position of an elite assistant drill instructor. For 18 grueling months, he woke up at the crack of dawn, screaming commands into the biting wind, marching for endless miles with heavily loaded tactical gear strapped to his back, and leading terrified new recruits through brutal, full-body physical conditioning. When he finally completed his service and confidently strode back into civilian life, the collective gasp from the wardrobe department could probably be heard from space. The soft, somewhat boyish idle elegance was completely gone, violently replaced by the rugged, hardened, weather-beaten solidity of a veteran military commander. His naturally massive shoulders had astonishingly broadened even further, fortified by layers of dense, highly functional, combat-ready muscle mass. His chest had visibly thickened to support a heavier, more imposing posture, and his jawline had sharpened into a lethal, uncompromising edge. He no longer just wore the clothes, he completely dominated them, exuding a terrifyingly effortless, overwhelming masculine gravity that simply cannot be bought in a store or manufactured by protein shakes. Today, as the global face of ultra-luxury brands like Gucci and Fred, Seokjin doesn't need to try to look powerful. He simply stands there in a custom, form-fitting bespoke suit, letting his naturally devastating military-hardened proportions effortlessly shatter the camera lenses and completely redefine the highest echelon of modern male beauty. But this staggering display of genetic royalty and raw, military-forged maturity leaves us with a truly terrifying, pulse-pounding question. If the eldest brother's God-given frame and soldier's grit could effortlessly rewrite the very rules of luxury fashion and bring the styling team to their knees, what kind of absolute, unmitigated chaos erupts in the dressing room when they have to deal with a member who literally stripped away his own youthful innocence to carve out a jawline so sharp and the core so flawlessly lethal that it single-handedly birthed an entirely new, deeply intoxicating era of gender-fluid high-fashion artistry. Number 4. Park Jimin. From chibi to high-fashion icon, the lethal metamorphosis of a swan. When we rewind the clock back to the aggressively chaotic debut era of 2013, the wardrobe department faced a uniquely cruel and emotionally agonizing paradox when it came to Park Jimin, a paradox that defined his early years and fundamentally shaped his grueling physical journey. On one hand, Jimin possessed an incredibly soft, endearingly cherubic face, complete with the iconic, squishy mochi cheeks that made him look like a perfectly innocent, vulnerable teenager who simply wanted to sing his heart out. On the other hand, the unforgiving demands of their gritty, rebellious hip-hop concept desperately required a designated muscle, an intimidating enforcer who could violently rip off his shirt mid-choreography to expose a set of deeply carved, rock-hard abdominal muscles during the legendary No More Dream dance break. This immense, crushing responsibility fell entirely on Jimin's young shoulders, forcing him into a horrifyingly restrictive cycle of extreme dieting, dangerous dehydration tactics, and agonizing late-night workouts just to maintain that artificial, hyper-masculine illusion, while his natural, contemporary trained body screened for a completely different kind of expression. For years, the styling team deliberately trapped him in a suffocating cage of oversized basketball jerseys, heavy gold chains, and snapbacks that aggressively clashed with his elegant, classically trained dancer soul, creating a deeply heartbreaking cognitive dissonance where the boy in the mirror didn't match the punishing, heavily armored hip-hop warrior forced onto the stage. However, the true, earth-shattering turning point, the magnificent, breathtaking metamorphosis that completely rewrote the history of K-pop fashion and sent the wardrobe department into an absolute frenzy, occurred during the deeply sensual, artistically revolutionary blood, sweat, and tears era. This was the exact moment Jimin finally shattered the suffocating mold of forced masculinity and fully embraced the devastatingly beautiful, dangerously fluid grace of his contemporary dance roots. He put himself through an intensely disciplined, incredibly grueling physical refinement process, intentionally shedding any remaining artificial bulk to reveal an astonishingly lean, aerodynamic, and terrifyingly strong dancer's physique that looked as if it had been painstakingly sculpted from pure liquid silver. The baby fat completely vanished, replaced overnight by a literal razor-sharp jawline that could cut glass, an impossibly slender waist, and incredibly dense, powerfully coiled thigh muscles, forged not in a sterile weight room, but through millions of hours of agonizing, gravity-defying leaps and flawless pirouettes on the cold, unforgiving practice room floor. The stylists were absolutely mesmerized by this new, lethal anatomy, immediately throwing out the heavy streetwear and radically pivoting towards a groundbreaking, dangerously androgynous wardrobe that permanently altered his stylistic trajectory. They began draping him in gossamer thin, sheer silk blouses that clung to his sweat-drenched skin, deeply plunging V-necks that exposed the elegant, sweeping lines of his collarbones, tightly laced corsets that cinched his impossibly narrow waist, and delicate, glittering chokers that highlighted the dangerous, feline arch of his neck. He became the undisputed king of gender-fluid high fashion, transforming into a mesmerizing ethereal siren who could exude more overwhelming, intoxicating power in a delicate lace shirt than most men could in a full suit of armor. This breathtaking evolution caught the obsessive attention of the global luxury fashion elite, eventually leading him to be crowned as the global ambassador for Dior, where his unique, flawlessly proportioned frame allowed him to effortlessly carry avant-garde, meticulously tailored couture with the intimidating, effortless grace of a modern-day prince. But beyond the glittering designer labels and the blinding stadium lights, Jimin's physical transformation is a profoundly emotional testament to his sheer, terrifying willpower, a story of a boy who literally starved and bled to fit an impossible mold, only to realize that his true, undeniable power lay in his vulnerability, his fluidity, and his absolute, uncompromising mastery over every single microscopic muscle in his own body. Watching him evolve from a self-conscious, pressured teenager desperate to look tough into a breathtakingly confident, high-fashion muse who commands the global stage with the deadly, quiet elegance of a black swan is one of the most inspiring, emotionally resonant journeys in the entire entertainment industry. But this devastating mastery of delicate, fluid strength forces us to confront a terrifying, wildly contrasting scenario. What absolute, unmitigated chaos unfolds in the fitting rooms when the styling team has to suddenly dress a member who started out as the quintessential slender anime boy next door, only to vanish into the brutal, unforgiving ranks of the military's elite counterterrorism special duty team and return as a massive, broad-chested, utterly terrifying tactical tank.
Number 3. Kim Taehyung, the SDT power shift, from ethereal Gucci muse to an absolute tactical juggernaut. When the doors to the HYBE dressing rooms first opened over a decade ago in the chaotic, hormone-fueled era of 2013, the styling department viewed the young Kim Taehyung as an ethereal, almost untouchable canvas, a boy who possessed the startlingly beautiful, razor-sharp facial features of a classic romance manga protagonist, but was anchored by an incredibly slender, fragile skeletal structure that seemed like a gentle breeze could easily blow him over. During the aggressive, testosterone-fueled early eras of No More Dream and Boy in Love, the wardrobe staff had to pull off minor, agonizing miracles just to make him look like a tough, rebellious schoolboy, strategically layering stiff, heavily structured school uniform blazers with aggressively thick artificial shoulder pads and rigid, uncompromising denim fabrics over his incredibly narrow shoulders just to create the desperate illusion of width and physical presence on camera. He was naturally lanky to a fault, possessing dangerously thin arms, a paper-thin waist, and a delicate neck that completely contradicted the impossibly deep, soulful, rumbling baritone of his voice, creating a mesmerizing but physically delicate aura that quickly made him the undisputed king of the youthful, vulnerable, boy-next-door aesthetic that the fans absolutely adored. As the years aggressively progressed and BTS violently skyrocketed to unimaginable, stratospheric global superstardom, Taehyung naturally matured, but he strictly and intentionally maintained that incredibly lean, statuesque, high-fashion runway model silhouette, seamlessly and brilliantly transitioning into his absolutely legendary Gucci boy era where the styling team finally realized his true, devastating power didn't lie in artificial, forced muscle bulk, but in eccentric, deeply romantic, and breathtakingly androgynous luxury fashion. The stylists began gleefully drowning him in wildly expensive, dramatically oversized knit cardigans, deeply unbuttoned floral silk shirts that practically floated around his collarbones, sweeping wide-leg tailored trousers, delicately patterned neckties, and soft, luxurious berets, treating his lithe, elegant body as the ultimate, flawless high-fashion coat hanger that could effortlessly elevate the most bizarre, avant-garde runway pieces into absolute visual poetry without even breaking a sweat. He quickly became the undisputed global face of ultra-luxury houses like Celine and Cartier, the quintessential, breathing embodiment of the brooding, indie rock chic aesthetic, a man whose delicate, slender collarbones, razor-sharp jawline, and elegantly long, artistic fingers were feverishly worshipped by the world's most elite fashion camera lenses, successfully convincing everyone, especially the deeply relieved wardrobe department, that he would forever remain the beautiful, slender, untouched muse of the Parisian luxury fashion world. But then, the terrifying, paradigm-shifting, and inevitable era of South Korean military enlistment loomed over the group like a dark cloud. And while the entire world fully expected the ethereal Celine boy to logically choose a quiet, standard administrative role or a public service position perfectly suited for his gentle, artistic, jazz-loving soul, Kim Taehyung made a decision so radically unexpected, dangerously intense, and mind-bogglingly aggressive that it completely shattered the internet and sent a massive, reverberating shockwave through the entire Korean entertainment industry. He didn't just enlist like a normal celebrity. He deliberately, voluntarily signed up for the incredibly brutal, fiercely elite, and physically excruciating special duty team, heavily known as the SDT, a highly classified, heavily armed military police counter-terrorism unit exclusively tasked with executing high-risk urban combat, hostage rescue missions, VIP protection, and rapid response tactical assaults in the most dangerous environments imaginable. The very second he stepped through the heavily guarded iron gates of that unforgiving, brutal military training camp, he declared an absolute, uncompromising war on his own physical limitations, publicly taking to social media to set a terrifying, jaw-dropping goal to completely obliterate his slender idol frame and violently bulk up to a massive 86 kilograms of pure, unadulterated, combat-ready muscle mass. The sheer, agonizing reality of daily SDT training is far beyond normal civilian comprehension. We are literally talking about a man who used to playfully complain about the heavy weight of his layered designer jewelry, now being aggressively forced to carry over 20 kilograms of heavy ballistic steel plates, Kevlar helmets, thick tactical boots, and heavy assault rifles while aggressively rappelling face first down the sides of towering concrete buildings, enduring freezing outdoor marches, and executing blistering, bone-crushing close-quarters combat drills in the freezing, unforgiving mud. The physical transformation that violently occurred behind those heavily guarded military walls over the next year was not just a simple glow-up. It was a completely violent, earth-shattering biological metamorphosis that defied every single stylistic precedent he had ever set in his entire career. When the first rare, heavily circulated, heavily pixelated photos and videos of Taehyung in his menacing black SDT tactical uniform finally leaked to the hyper-vigilant public, the collective, horrified scream from the HYB wardrobe department could probably be heard echoing all the way across the streets of Seoul, because the delicate, slender, flower boy Gucci muse was entirely gone, completely violently replaced by a towering, impossibly broad, utterly terrifying tactical juggernaut who looked like he could punch a hole straight through a brick wall. His once slender, perfectly sloping shoulders had mutated into massive, imposing boulders of dense muscle. His chest had thickened into a solid, impenetrable wall of heavy mass that practically threatened to violently rip the seams of his tight black combat t-shirt apart with every breath. And his arms, which were once completely swallowed by oversized designer sleeves, were now incredibly thick, aggressively vascular, bulging with newly forged biceps, and radiating an overwhelming, aggressively dominant masculine power that left millions of fans absolutely breathless and frantically re-evaluating their entire existence. The insane, mind-bending visual juxtaposition of his impossibly beautiful, soulful, doe-like eyes and that iconic, innocent boxy smile staring out from underneath a heavy black tactical helmet, paired perfectly with a neck that had visibly, dramatically thickened to support the crushing, daily weight of his military combat gear, created a violent visual whiplash that completely short-circuited the brains of the global fandom. This wasn't just a standard gym bulk fueled by protein shakes and personal trainers. This was the raw, hardened, lethal, and deeply functional density of a literal Tier 1 military operator, a man who had completely and ruthlessly stripped away his luxurious, pampered, untouchable idle existence to forge his own body in the relentless fires of extreme, agonizing physical endurance and unyielding mental discipline. For the elite stylists sitting safely in their temperature-controlled studios surrounded by racks of expensive clothing, the sudden realization of this transformation was absolutely, undeniably terrifying. Every single custom-tailored slim suit, every delicate, translucent silk shirt, and every aggressively slim-cut Celine leather jacket currently hanging uselessly in his multi-million-dollar dressing room is now completely, irrevocably useless, because his newly forged, massive, 86-kilogram SDT frame will simply destroy those delicate, expensive fabrics the very moment he attempts to flex his ridiculously broad back. He has violently, masterfully rewritten his own physical destiny, completely transforming from the group's most delicate, artistic romantic into a dangerously imposing, heavy-hitting powerhouse who no longer needs cleverly draped clothing to create a dominating silhouette, because his body is now the undeniable, terrifyingly gravitational center of any room he walks into. This breathtaking display of sheer, unrelenting willpower, jaw-dropping dedication, and military-grade physical dominance is an absolute masterclass in defying expectations, proving once and for all that beneath that angelic, deeply artistic exterior lies the terrifying, unbreakable discipline of a literal, combat-ready warrior who refuses to be boxed into a single aesthetic category. But this absolute, unmitigated wardrobe disaster that Taehyung has gleefully caused leaves us desperately clinging to the edge of our seats, sweating profusely with an even more terrifying, heart-pounding question. If the delicate, artsy vocalist could completely shatter his own physical limits and mutate into a massive, broad-chested tactical tank in the span of a single, grueling enlistment period, what in the absolute name of all that is holy happens to the measuring tapes and the stylists? Sanity when we dare to look at the man who was already deeply, fiercely obsessed with lifting heavy iron long before the military ever called his name.
Number 2. Kim Namjoon, the fitness metamorphosis, the intellectual giant who built a literal wall of muscle. When we journey all the way back to the incredibly chaotic, deeply uncertain early days of BTS's debut in 2013, the wardrobe department was faced with a very specific, deeply frustrating structural dilemma when it came to dressing the group's visionary leader, Kim Namjoon. As the tallest member of the newly formed septet, Namjoon possessed an undeniably towering natural height that should have theoretically made him the easiest member to dress. But the absolute, undeniable reality was that his teenage frame was astonishingly, heartbreakingly lanky, heavily plagued by awkwardly long, gangly limbs, severely sloping shoulders, and a surprisingly narrow chest that made standard hip-hop clothing hang off him like a deflated parachute. In those aggressively testosterone-fueled, heavily conceptual early eras, the styling team desperately tried to artificially construct a fiercely intimidating, rugged underground rapper persona for him, burying his incredibly slender, fragile frame beneath absurdly oversized graphic t-shirts, heavy, suffocating leather vests lined with aggressive metallic spikes, massive gold chains that practically weighed down his delicate neck, and highly questionable, deeply regrettable hairstyles that were specifically designed to distract the audience from his deeply insecure, unpolished physical stature. Namjoon himself openly harbored a deep, profound awkwardness regarding his own body. He was a fiercely intellectual, fiercely brilliant musical genius, trapped inside a clumsy, rapidly growing teenage vessel that he didn't quite know how to control, often resulting in accidental destruction of stage props and a deeply endearing but physically hesitant stage presence. For years, the stylist simply treated him as a tall, static coat rack for heavy streetwear, completely masking his natural proportions because there simply wasn't enough muscle mass to properly fill out the heavily structured, commanding garments that a leader of his immense, world-changing caliber truly deserved to wear. However, as the grueling, relentless years of explosive global touring violently took their toll on his body, resulting in chronic back pain and immense physical exhaustion, Namjoon made a quiet, initially medically driven decision to start doing Pilates and light physical therapy to simply correct his posture and survive the grueling choreography. A subtle shift that would eventually, completely, irreversibly trigger the most terrifying, awe-inspiring, and internet-breaking physical metamorphosis in the history of the Korean entertainment industry. What began as a desperate necessity for physical survival rapidly, obsessively evolved into a deeply profound, almost spiritual relationship with heavy iron and the Hybe corporate weight room. As the immense, crushing, unimaginable psychological pressure of leading the biggest music group on the entire planet threatened to overwhelm his brilliant, fiercely overactive mind, Namjoon discovered a profound, beautifully silent sanctuary in the brutal, repetitive, unforgiving discipline of heavy weightlifting, finding an immense, grounding peace in the simple, primal act of pushing his physical limits until his muscles literally screamed. When the global pandemic forcibly locked the world down and stripped away their grueling touring schedule, Namjoon practically moved into the gym, and the physical results that violently erupted from this intense isolation period completely short-circuited the global internet and sent the entire Hybe wardrobe department into a state of absolute, unmitigated panic. The tall, lanky, awkward underground rapper completely vanished, aggressively replaced by a towering, impossibly massive, broad-chested titan of a man who looked like he had literally eaten a mountain. His once deeply sloping shoulders exploded into incredibly dense, impossibly wide boulders that completely obliterated standard clothing sample sizes. His chest thickened into a solid, impenetrable wall of sheer, unadulterated muscle, and his arms, which were once so fragile-looking, became aggressively thick, heavily vascular, and terrifyingly powerful, famously resulting in a viral collective fandom meltdown where millions of fans desperately, hilariously, begged Hybe to close the gyms because his rapidly expanding physical mass was becoming dangerously, intoxicatingly overwhelming. The styling department was suddenly thrust into a massive, unprecedented crisis. They could no longer just throw oversized streetwear on him because his newly forged, fiercely commanding, bodybuilder-esque physique demanded a completely different level of sartorial respect, completely destroying the delicate seams of standard luxury garments every time he casually flexed his ridiculously broad back. They had to radically, brilliantly pivot his entire aesthetic direction, completely throwing away the flashy, heavily layered hip-hop gear and entirely embracing a fiercely mature, aggressively sophisticated minimalist luxury aesthetic that perfectly complemented his terrifyingly massive physical presence and his deeply intellectual, fiercely masculine, and deeply sophisticated aura that absolutely devours the camera. Seeing the man who used to awkwardly hide his thin frame beneath oversized jerseys now confidently, effortlessly dominating global fashion campaigns in perfectly tailored chest-bearing woven suits, exuding a fiercely intellectual, terrifyingly masculine, and deeply sophisticated aura that absolutely devours the camera, is a profoundly emotional, deeply inspiring testament to his journey. He didn't just build muscle, he aggressively, beautifully built physical armor to protect his incredibly sensitive, poetic heart, transforming his body into a massive, unyielding fortress that perfectly matches the immense, world-shaking gravity of his brilliant mind. But this absolute, jaw-dropping display of sheer intellectual discipline and terrifying physical bulk forces us to nervously, frantically ask the ultimate, heart-stopping question. If the deeply philosophical, book-loving leader could casually rebuild his entire skeletal structure and spark a global crisis in the wardrobe department through sheer, unrelenting gym obsession, what in the absolute, terrifying name of all things holy takes the undisputed #1 spot, forcing the stylist to completely bow down to a man who literally possessed the golden genetics of a global pop god from the very beginning and single-handedly obliterated the boundaries of global pop culture fitness? Number 1. Jungkook, the golden evolution, the ultimate apex predator of global pop fashion. When the heavy, intimidating iron doors of the big hit practice rooms first swung open to reveal a terrified, painfully shy 15-year-old boy from Busan who would literally wait until all the older members had completely fallen asleep just so he could quietly take a quick shower without anyone looking at him, absolutely no one in the styling department could have possibly predicted the sheer, catastrophic, and completely unprecedented magnitude of the physical metamorphosis they were about to witness over the next agonizingly beautiful decade. In the incredibly chaotic, heavily armored debut era of 2013, Jungkook was nothing more than a wide-eyed, fragile child thrust onto a massive, unforgiving global stage, and the wardrobe team deliberately treated him as the group's precious, heavily protected baby brother, aggressively burying his slight, rapidly growing teenage frame beneath suffocating layers of oversized hip-hop jerseys, massive snapbacks, and excessively baggy shorts that completely swallowed his thin legs and intentionally emphasized his pure, untouched youthful innocence. For the first few years, the stylist possessed complete, dictatorial control over his physical aesthetic, safely boxing him into the endearing, non-threatening schoolboy archetype, while his naturally introverted personality perfectly mirrored his incredibly youthful, unpolished silhouette, creating a deeply endearing image of a kid who simply loves singing more than anything else in the world. However, hidden deep beneath that notoriously shy, doe-eyed exterior was a terrifyingly competitive, fiercely relentless and aggressively dedicated athlete, possessing what can only be accurately described as a set of literal, 1 in a billion, god-tier golden genetics that were desperately waiting to be violently awakened. As Jungkook slowly matured out of his awkward teenage years and the crushing pressure of global superstardom mounted, an insatiable, almost frightening obsession with extreme physical conditioning completely consumed him. He didn't just casually start going to the gym, he violently threw himself into the most grueling, punishing, and physically devastating training regimens imaginable, dedicating thousands upon thousands of hours to heavy iron weightlifting, intense, bone-crushing boxing sessions, and explosive cardiovascular conditioning that would completely break a normal human being. The wardrobe department watched in absolute paralyzed horror and undeniable awe as their precious, fragile baby brother literally mutated into a towering, terrifyingly dense, and impossibly balanced athletic juggernaut right before their very eyes, a physical evolution so rapid and so aggressive that they constantly had to desperately alter his custom performance outfits literally hours before a concert, just because his massive thighs and rapidly expanding chest kept violently ripping through the expensive, delicate seams of his tailored pants and structured jackets. The ultimate, undeniable tipping point, the historical moment that completely shattered the global internet and forced the entire luxury fashion industry to violently bow down to his newly forged sovereignty, was the violently sensual, earth-shattering fake love era, where the styling team finally surrendered to his terrifyingly muscular physique and strapped him into that absolutely legendary, deeply restrictive leather body harness, exposing a set of rock-hard, flawlessly sculpted abdominal muscles that literally caused millions of fans to simultaneously lose their collective minds in stadium crowds across the globe. From that defining moment onward, the stylist completely threw away the rulebook, realizing that the absolute greatest sartorial weapon they possessed was literally just Jungkook's bare, impeccably conditioned skin, transitioning him into a breathtakingly dominant, aggressively confident wardrobe of dangerously unbuttoned silk shirts, tightly fitted leather trousers, cropped jackets, and heavy industrial combat boots that perfectly accentuated his impossibly thick, powerful lower body and his ridiculously broad, heavily muscled shoulders. But the evolution did not stop at mere muscle mass. As he entered his breathtaking Chapter 2 solo era, Jungkook fiercely rebelled against the pristine, spotless idol image by aggressively claiming absolute ownership over his own physical canvas, completely covering his right arm in a stunning, heavy sleeve of dark, intricate tattoos and piercing his lip and eyebrow, adding a gritty, dangerously intoxicating underground punk rock edge to his flawless Olympic physique. This devastatingly masculine, unapologetically raw physical maturity brilliantly culminated in his historic, internet-breaking coronation as the ultimate global ambassador for Calvin Klein, where he confidently stripped down to absolutely nothing but a pair of classic denim jeans, flawlessly showcasing an ultra-lean, perfectly symmetrical, and terrifyingly powerful boxer's physique that completely redefined the global standard for modern male sex appeal, radiating an overwhelming, borderline predatory confidence that single-handedly crashed the brand's entire global website within mere minutes of the campaign's launch. Watching the shy, skinny kid who used to awkwardly wear oversized school uniforms confidently evolve into a heavily tattooed, fiercely pierced, and terrifyingly muscular global pop god who casually commands Times Square and breaks the internet just by taking off his shirt is an incredibly emotional, profoundly staggering testament to his relentless, unyielding drive for absolute perfection. He didn't just grow up, he completely conquered his own biology, weaponized his golden genetics, and forcefully bent the entire global fashion industry to his absolute will, proving without a single shadow of a doubt that he is the undisputed, terrifyingly perfect physical apex of BTS, the ultimate blank canvas turned breathtaking masterpiece, who officially, undeniably, and effortlessly claims the absolute #1 spot on this legendary list. And there you have it, the absolute, undeniably definitive Stylist ranking of the most shocking, earth-shattering physical transformations in the entire legendary history of BTS. What started as 7 incredibly uncertain, slender teenage boys squeezed into suffocating, oversized hip-hop gear back in the cramped dorms of 2013 has violently and beautifully evolved into a breathtaking, jaw-dropping lineup of global fashion icons, heavily tattooed pop gods, and terrifyingly massive tactical soldiers who effortlessly command the world's most elite luxury runways. Their journey is a profoundly emotional, deeply inspiring testament to the sheer, unyielding power of unrelenting discipline, proving that a true glow-up isn't just about changing your expensive designer clothes, but about literally forging your own physical destiny through millions of hours of blood, sweat, and agonizing tears behind closed doors. But now, we have to turn the spotlight over to you, the ultimate judges. Do you completely and passionately agree with the stylist's jaw-dropping decision to crown the golden maknae as the undisputed king of the physical metamorphosis? Or do you violently believe that Kim Namjoon's towering, gym-obsessed wall of muscle, or Kim Taehyung's brutal, broad-chested SDT tactical evolution was brutally robbed of the absolute #1 spot? Did Min Yoongi's sleek, aristocratic refinement or Park Jimin's dangerously fluid, gender-bending, high-fashion runway dominance completely steal your art instead? Sound off with your most fierce, uncompromising opinions in the comments section below. Absolutely smash that like button until it breaks if this video completely blew your mind and made you reevaluate your entire existence. And make absolutely sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss another insane, exclusive, behind-the-scenes dive into the glittering, secretive world of your favorite global idols. Until next time, stay passionate, stay hyped, and we will see you in the next mind-bending video.